Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the URA's March 2021 board meeting. I am Diamante Walker, the Deputy Executive Director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority, and would like to welcome you on behalf of Chairman Sam Williamson, Executive Director Greg Flissrum, and the remaining URA board. We have a jam-packed agenda for you today, and Sam, I do believe that you have a quorum available, so you can go ahead and get started.
Great. Then the first agenda item is roll call, and looks like I see Representative Gainey, I see Councilman Lavelle, I see Director Hirsch, and is Jody on yet?
Jody's here.
Jody's here. So all five board members are present. It can let the record show. We will move into public comment. And I think we did actually get a couple of people who signed up to provide virtual public comment or live public comment here. I'll note just before we get into the live public comment, we did receive a handful of public comment submissions in writing in advance of the meeting. I'm not going to read them all, but I will note that they have been received, distributed to the board, and that they will all be posted to the URA's website for the public to see. We received 3 submissions pertaining in large part to the proposed bond issuance that's on our agenda, one from Zachary Littleberry, a second from Joanna Deming, and a third from Megan Confer-Hammond. And then we received written submission from Lance Harrell, the CSIP project administrator for the Lower Hill development. And Lance's submission is in large part the February progress report from the CSIP Executive Management Committee, which is incredibly important. So I would encourage the board to take a look at that when you have a free moment. So can we roll the live public comment? Excited to see how this works.
Yes, up first will be Robert Damewood. You'll have 3 minutes, Robert, and I'll let you know when you have 10 seconds left.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Bob Damewood, staff attorney with Regional Housing Legal Services. And I'd like to say a few words about the OWN PGH program. First of all, and I think this is reflected in some of the written comments, it doesn't really, it's not directed to the city's most critical housing needs. I'm sure everyone on the board is familiar with Mullen and Lonergan's housing needs assessment. They found that the greatest gap of affordable and available units, a 20,000 unit gap, was at roughly 30% of area median income. They only studied affordability gaps up to about 70% of AMI. They used a different income metric, unfortunately. And at around 70% of AMI, the gap was about 6,000 units, right, of units that were affordable and available to households at that income level. But what's clear is that the gap shrinks the closer you get to moderate income. Now, I didn't see any AMI targets stated in the agenda description of the OWN PGH program. The Post-Gazette this morning quoted 80% AMI to 115% AMI. That's far above where the city's most critical housing needs are. And the program is really designed to provide greater subsidies to those with higher incomes, right? So the rehab loans are capped at 20% of the purchase price, which means to get the maximum rehab loan, you have to buy a $200,000 home. And that's really out of reach for folks, at the incomes that we really need to address in Pittsburgh. The other problem is that, the OWN PGH program would apparently fail to respond to the city's greatest housing repair needs. So homes with higher repair needs are less expensive, right? Which, because of this 20% of the purchase price gap means, for those homes, there would be fewer funds available for home repairs. Also, neighborhoods with an older disinvested housing stock would get less support for the same reason. Now, both of these things implicate fair housing concerns. right? You know, as the board knows, there's a racial homeownership gap in Pittsburgh, and that didn't occur by accident. It's the product of decades of discriminatory housing policies, which means that, you know, public agencies like the URA have both a legal and moral responsibility to help to close that gap. So for these reasons, I would ask the board to consider redesigning ONPGH with these considerations in mind. You know, provide deeper income targeting to get us close to where the greatest
10 seconds.
Okay, and you know, provide greater subsidy at lower price ranges, and I'd be glad to work with anybody on this. Thank you.
And next up on public comment is Felicity Williams.
I have a quick procedural question. If I have two different topics I want to talk about, do I cover both in 3 minutes, or do I have two separate 3 minutes?
I'll defer to the board and the directors on that point.
I believe it's 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Felicity Williams, and I am the Programs and Policy Manager at the Hill CDC. I'm here to touch on two topics, the Crawford Townhomes project, as well as the Center Avenue project that is on the agenda. The Crawford Townhomes project has yet to submit to the Development Review Panel, or DRP, the Hill District's unified, comprehensive, and democratic community review process that gives every Hill District resident a voice in the redevelopment of their neighborhood. I am concerned with the arbitrariness in which the URA seeks broad community input versus selective community input. For example, most recently, the URA required an update letter from the DRP for the Grayson parking lot expansion, which we have repeatedly and continue to support over the years. However, the URA did not require a letter of support for this project. I think it is important that the developer has met with the HOA for Crawford Housing, as is should be his due diligence, but we need to give the broader community an opportunity to weigh in. Related to the Center Avenue projects, I want to first start by saying that we are certainly excited about and in support of Tom Boyd's plan. Once again, though, my comment is directed towards URA conduct. This project has also not yet submitted to the Development Review Panel. While I understand the URA attempted to imitate a portion of the Hill District Community Review process, it certainly falls short of the comprehensive review that is normally completed. The URA needs to reconcile the fact that it is a government agency, not a community organization. And I understand that while the URA aspires to meet the needs of competing interests, it cannot be at the disposal of our community process, particularly of those in neighborhoods that are still recovering from the poor policies of the URA in the past. It is a flawed argument to circumvent the community review process, of which 6 community-based organizations are members, because one member is working on a project several blocks down the street. It is critical that the URA work with the Development Review Panel prior to disposing of land in the Hill District. And I look forward, hopefully, to the URA adopting a much more consistent policy on when they do work with the Development Review Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the end of public comment. In which case we would proceed to approval of the board meeting minutes from the regular board meeting of February 11th. Minutes have been distributed to the board in advance.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries and the minutes are approved. Bringing us into the RFPs, RFQs, and then announcements.
I can take this first item. If you can just go to the next slide, please. So this is an announcement. It's a non-voting item. Just an announcement that the URA is releasing an RFP for the Beltuber School, which is located in the Beltuber neighborhood. We issued this on March 8th, 2021, on behalf of the Beltuber Consensus Group. The URA does not own this property or have any funding associated with it. We are releasing it as part of our efforts to engage with and help out with smaller community organizations throughout the city of Pittsburgh. Anyone interested in looking at the RFP, it's on our website, and it's also on our bidding platform, IonWave. You can follow the link located on the slide. And the requested use is housing and community space.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Paul Martinchik of the URA. We will be issuing an RFP toward the end of the month or near the beginning of April for construction management construction management, construction inspection services related to the construction of the Somerset at Frick Phase 2 parklet at Shelburne Drive. It includes concrete flatwork, landscaping, trees, electric lighting, gazebos, benches, and park amenities. And we have the goal of 18% minority and 7% owned women-owned business participation. And that RFP will be posted on the IonWave platform with the address there on the slide. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We have a bunch of announcements.
Yeah, I'll start. Hey, everybody. Greg Flistrom, the Executive Director of the URA. I'd like to announce that we've hired a new Director of Development Services, David Serbin. I see David's got his camera on and is waving. Really excited to have David aboard. David's a longtime Pittsburgh resident and community development professional who most recently worked at the Hill CDC. And previous to that at the East Liberty Development Incorporated, ELDI. Really excited to have David aboard. He will be absorbing what used to be Sushila's old role, but that we've added a few other things to his plate, including managing URA's real estate portfolio. So just want to welcome David. You'll be seeing and hearing a lot more from him in the months to come. That's it.
Thank you. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Dylan, could you advance the slides, please?
Oh, there's David again.
So hello, and thank you for the opportunity to bring announcement to the board. You may remember in December 2020, I came to the board asking for authorization to execute the deed to sell PTC Parcel 3 to Elmhurst Development Group. I'm happy and excited to report that they were able to meet all the requirements, and on February 18th, Elmhurst closed on the property. And on an even slightly more exciting note, this week, they began mobilization activities on site. Phase 1 of the project, the Elmhurst Innovation Center, is expected to be completed in about 12 months and will bring 175,000 square feet of office, flex tech, light manufacturing, and research space to the Pittsburgh Technology Center. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, Jessica Smith-Perry going to cover this.
Yes, hi. So this is our housing dashboard. As usual, though, we did break out the clients that are turned down and the reasons why, but this is the housing stabilization program. This is the statistics since last March. So pretty much exactly a year ago when COVID started and the economy shut down. You can see to date, we have received 2,600 applications. Half of those have been successfully processed. So we're at, about 1,200 successfully processed and helped through the program. And then of the ones that have been declined, 30% of them have lived outside the city, and then 30% of them just did not return the phone calls from our social service providers. So those are the largest reasons why people have been turned out from the program. But you can see that the program every month, is increasing. And also, just as a reminder, the county program that is operating jointly with the city and the county is rolling out this month as well. So there will be multiple sources for people to access when they need rental assistance. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for adding that additional level of detail on the folks who the HSP program was unable to support.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Wilhelm, the Director of Commercial Lending. This is our commercial lending dashboard for the month, and this is year to date. So we have closed on 12 loans. 92% of those loans went to businesses owned by minorities or women. We are highlighting a couple of our borrowers. African Cuisine, one of our new borrowers. They just opened a brand new full service restaurant in Squirrel Hill. Sienna Kane was the lending analyst on that deal, and their grand opening was quite successful. There was a line down the block, so we're very excited for them. And also a previous borrower that's been in our portfolio for a while is Bridges and Bourbon. They're in the cultural district, and they were highlighted recently for their very appealing mocktails. So they had received previously 2 loans as well as a facade grant from us.
Great. I think that takes us, to the voting agenda.
So this next item, I do believe is a walk-on item that we would like to put before the board. I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer Wilhelm again to present authorization to accept a $2.5 million investment from Citizens Bank.
Thank you, Diamante. We are very excited to bring this to the board today. Citizens Bank has, in partnership with the URA, is going to be investing $2.5 million in our business lending program if this investment is accepted by the board. And another 2.5 is going to be going into Invest PGH, which you may recall is a CDFI that the URA has helped launch to help address needs within the city of Pittsburgh around accelerating even more business lending. So we work closely together, the two entities, and this would allow us both to capitalize ourselves further. The Invest PGH board has already approved the $2.5 million investment that will go there. And I'm asking the board to approve the $2.5 million investment that will go to the URA. I also, in conjunction with this, am excited to announce that our emerging CFI, Invest PGH, has actually been certified as of February. It is a certified CDFI. And I wanna actually give kudos to Rebecca Davidson-Wagner, who is the president of Invest PGH. It is because of her hard work that this organization exists, and it's because of her hard work that we got this organization certified. So it has a great future ahead of it, and we're very excited that we are working in partnership to help small businesses. I will also note for the audience that in part due to the $2.5 million investment that Citizens put into Invest PGH, a new lending program is being launched as of today. So we are very excited about that. It is a program called Accelerating Business Expansion, or ABLE for short, and that will help either new or growing businesses with loans up to $150,000. So there's a lot of amazing things happening through this partnership with Citizens. I also have Jason Jones here with us. He is representing Citizens. He is the Community Development Manager, and he's a Vice President at Citizens. And I wanted to ask him if he wanted to say a couple words about this opportunity.
Sure, Jennifer. We as Citizens are very, very excited. We're happy to bring it to Instill. Thank you to your team, Diamante, Walker, Jennifer, Rebecca have been amazing to work with and through. And so we're glad that we can get that collaboration and hopefully dig a little bit deeper into collaboration with maybe some partnerships that we'll kind of speak offline with. But the other aspect of it is I'm proud to also serve as the board or the chair for the investment committee for Invest PGH. And so Citizens is really supportive of what's happening and what's going on. And so kudos to you guys, and we appreciate all the hard work.
I will also mention that this is not the only great investment that Citizens has made. They had also previously provided $200,000 to help with our emergency COVID lending. And they came in on a grant program to help Black businesses that were harmed during the unrest back in May. And so they have been an ongoing great partner for us. And I will open it up if there are any questions regarding this investment.
I do have a question, but first I just want to thank Citizens for making this investment. I was going to note the prior $200,000 investment too, which is almost a year ago, and obviously small by comparison, but was really, you know, I think the first outside investment that we received after COVID hit that allowed us to start those emergency funding programs, and was not coincidentally then followed up by larger contributions from other financial institutions like Dollar Bank and then PNC Bank and others. And I think it was in large part Citizens going first that prompted some action on the part of others. So we certainly appreciate the ongoing partnership and continued investment.
Sure. And Sam, if I can interject really quickly, again, really just kudos to Diamante. That was a great avenue for us to kind of get off, and we got that off very quickly. Unprecedented in Citizens world, things don't happen that quickly, and so I appreciate the hard work that Diamante was able to put forth.
It was a team effort. Kudos to Jennifer and Rebecca for mobilizing so quickly to get this deal done. It is remarkable how quickly this was able to come together. And thank you, Jason, for being such an excellent partner at Citizens. We greatly appreciate the investment. We're going to be able to help a lot of diverse companies by way of your contribution.
So the board action is simply to accept the money, but can you talk about how at least the URA portion of this will actually be used?
Yes, so the URA portion will be used within our Pittsburgh Business Fund, an existing loan program, to help bolster our ability to provide even a higher rate of loans through that program. It will have preference. These dollars will be preferenced to minority-owned businesses, but it will bolster the activity through that program. That program goes up to $500,000. It's really one of our largest market rate programs, and it helps businesses of all sectors and industries within the city of Pittsburgh.
Are there other questions or comments from other board members?
No question. Just a comment. I want to thank all the Director Walker and all Rebecca and all staff involved on getting this. I also want to thank Citizens for being a tremendous partner for us. This is going to have a tremendous impact on initiatives such as Avenues of Hope, but also building up many Black businesses throughout our region and our city. So just thank you all for your work on moving this forward.
If anyone is interested, of course, in our lending programs, go to ura.org, or we have a brand new website that InvestPGH did launch. It's up, it's live, investpgh.org. So you can find information on the programs at InvestPGH if you go to that website as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If there are none, then a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve.
So I think a motion from Director Powell, and I'll consider that a second from Councilman Lavelle. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to have a discussion on and vote on the 2021 operating budget.
Yes, this is Joe Karlovitz, Director of Finance at the URA. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to bring to you the 2021 operating budget, seeking authorization to adopt this operating budget. You can see that there is a breakdown here on this slide of the $12.61 million that it costs to operate and bring all of these programs that the URA executes. This operating budget represents a 10% overall reduction from last year's budget, driven mainly by cost savings through the organizational restructuring that has occurred, slightly offset by investments in software that will additionally bring better services from the URA to provide citywide. So with that, I am happy to entertain any questions or discussions that I can help clarify, but we are seeking authorization to adopt this budget.
So I don't have any questions, but I do want to note publicly the incredible amount of work that Joe has done in a very short period of time at the URA. I think Joe's been on staff for only about 6 months and inherited the challenge and the directive to try to bring to the board and the public a greater level of transparency and understanding and clarity around the URA's overall finances, and is well in their way in accomplishing that. So I appreciate that. I mean, it's not entirely clear in just this one chart the amount of work that's kind of gone into providing the board with information around the operating budget that answers every question that we might have, and probably others that we didn't think of. But it's been, I think, the most robust process that I can remember on the board in terms of like providing financial data and information to the board about the state of the URA finances. So just want to recognize your work and thank you for that.
Thank you, Sam. And I look forward to working with you and the rest of the board to continue this mission. So thanks.
Any questions or comments on the budget itself?
Motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to talk about the potential bond issuance.
Hi, everybody. So today I'm here to talk about Own PGH. The authorizations will be to issue one or more series of mortgage revenue bonds in a total amount of $22 million, and to allocate $4 million of URA's funds that we have on hand from previous mortgage revenue bond proceeds to fund the second mortgages. Next slide. So this is the premise of Own PGH. So in the city, one thing that has been missing from the mortgage market is an acquisition rehab program, because most mortgages require the house to be livable, defined as a working bathroom, a working kitchen, and no other major deficiencies in the house for a bank to give a mortgage. And we do have a lot of housing stock in the city that needs, new windows, a new roof, or potentially a new kitchen before the family can move in. And there hasn't been a mortgage product for that because banks look at it as is appraisal. They don't look at a post-construction appraisal. So unless somebody had cash to do those things, they would not be able to get the loan from the bank. So this is what Own PGH is trying to address, is to help fix up some of the blighted and abandoned houses that are in the city through this program. So the bond proceeds will be used to fund first mortgages. We will be bringing on banking partners to make these mortgages to new homeowners who will then be fixing up the house through a 0% interest, fully deferred second mortgage from the URA to fix up the house. Next slide. So you can see here are some of the parameters it must be used for the purchase of homes. It cannot be used for refinancing. People can borrow up to 97% of value. This means that when this is partnered with our existing HOF funded down payment closing cost assistance program, most people will be able to get into the house for almost zero money down, and then do the repairs needed with a 0% interest loan from us once they're in there. So there are income limits, which means people can't make more than this, the money that you see here. Soon I'm going to show you a slide that has targeted and non-targeted areas. The entire city of Pittsburgh is eligible for this program. Some parts of the city are considered targeted, some are non-targeted. Households up to that amount, those amounts you see there, are eligible per federal guidelines. However, given some of the public comment and public feedback we've been receiving, I've been emailing back and forth with our bond counsel during the meeting, and I have found out that we can make our own income guidelines within these parameters. So if we wanted to go lower, that is something we're eligible to do. This is the first time I'm at the board. This is going to be about a 4-month process before this gets issued. Probably in June will be the issuance. So you will see me back at the board with final program guidelines at some point, and we can make more specific decisions like that in those program guidelines. Next slide. So here is the targeted areas. I must stress the URA did not create these targeted areas. These came from the federal government using census data. And once again, it doesn't mean you have to be in a targeted area to use the program. It just means that the income thresholds are higher in the targeted areas. Additionally, for someone to purchase in a targeted area, they do not have to be a first-time home buyer. To purchase in a non-targeted area, they do have to be a first-time home buyer, which is identified as not owning the house for the last 3 years. This is a citywide program. Next slide. And these next 2 slides just basically show the funds, because the URA, we're issuing debt here. The URA is taking $22 million of debt, that's what a bond is, out on our balance sheet to do this. So if you look at the top of this, we take this debt and investors buy it from us, through the help of PNC Capital Markets, who's our underwriter, and that cash the investors bring to buy this tax exempt volume cap goes to Zion Bank in blue. They'll hold the money. They're our trustee. And Zion will then give the funding as the mortgage is closed to US Bank, who's the servicer. That's the company that the people who buy houses will be paying their mortgage payment to. And US Bank takes that money and gives it to whichever lenders we have in the city originating this program. We have not brought lenders onto the program yet. We will be doing that in the next couple months, but they will most likely be, local banks that everybody's familiar with inside the city will be the lenders for this program. And the money then goes to the Pittsburgh resident when they buy the house. This means if a Pittsburgh homeowner wants to buy a house and they know that they're going to need, to fix the roof as soon as they purchase the house or put in windows or put it in kitchen, they go to a bank, let's say they walk into Dollar Bank and they say, I want to buy this house and I need additional funding to do these repairs. Dollar Bank will say, well, you could apply to a mortgage with us, which is sponsored through the URA. And they would get that first mortgage, and at the same time, they would get a second mortgage with the URA to do the repairs. And we would all come to the closing table at the same time. Next slide. And then once the Pittsburgh resident is in the house and lives there, looking at the bottom of the slide first, the Pittsburgh resident would then pay their mortgage monthly to US Bank, who gives the money to our trustee, Zion, who takes that money and repays our investors. They repay our debt, and that is how our $22 million of debt gets repaid, is through the monthly mortgage payments of the residents. Next slide. And you can see here, this is just outlining the bond team. We have a lot of folks helping us with this. This is kind of a big, issuance for the URA, and you can see a timeline, but we are really trying to hit a summer issuance, which means, will be a July or August program rollout. So we're really hopeful that the first people will be able to buy their houses, in July and August. Are there any questions?
sure there are questions. I'd want to just provide a little bit of commentary first before we just, and a little bit of maybe additional kind of background and level setting as we continue the conversation. I mean, I think it's first important to reiterate that the action here today is to go out to market for the bonds principally, right? Not to set criteria for the program. That the criteria that were reviewed by Jessica a couple of slides ago are criteria of limits set by the federal government because this is a tax-free bond, but that we can and should and will still set program guidelines for this program so that the investments are targeting the parts of the city and the people in the city that we most want to help with this program. And that's really what I mostly wanted to talk about, which is the fact that there is still, as we know, a persistent income and wealth gap based on race in this country that hasn't changed in 50 years. That the black-white wealth gap is as bad today as it was in 1968. And frankly, the pandemic has made it worse. So we're headed, if anything, in the wrong direction, not the right direction. That's a problem for our economy, which is why the URA needs to address it. It's also a problem for our city, for our society, for our democracy. And at least under the current leadership of the URA, it is one of the main things that we've got to address and work on if we want to build a better city and a city for all. Can't continue to exist and live in a place where, you know, the average wealth of a white household is 11.5 times that of a black household. It's bad for our economy. It's bad for all of us. And one of the factors that is driving that, not the only factor by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the factors that's driving that wealth gap is the gap in homeownership, which is worse in Pittsburgh than in most places in the country. There's nationally about a 32% gap in homeownership. You know, nationally, about 70% of white families own their own homes, while only about 42% of black families own their own homes. But in Pittsburgh, that's worse. In Pittsburgh, white people own homes at a higher rate, 74%, and black Pittsburghers own homes only at 32.5% of the time, which means our gap, our homeownership gap here is about 10% worse than the national average. And that's what this program is principally designed to address, or needs to be designed to address. You know, I mean, homeownership is not the panacea. We've got to raise wages. Workers need to organize. We've got to transform our economy. We've got to do reparations. We've got to do all kinds of things. But it's true that the net worth of a homeowner is literally 40 times that of a renter. And so this program is a necessary step in the right direction. But so the first step, I think, is to do this bond issue. The next step will be to make sure that we get the program guidelines correct, so that we are targeting the money to the income thresholds where it can be most helpful.
That's right.
So with that, I just wanted to provide that additional context so that it's clear kind of the context in which this is being thought about and proposed is you know, as a economic and racial justice tool.
Yeah, I don't have a question per se. I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate the importance of setting program guidelines that ensure this doesn't become a tool that gentrifiers can use to, you know, use their good credit rating to buy a house in Lawrenceville and flip it. Right. And, you know, I know that's not the point that we're at today, but it's something I'm deeply concerned about. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, as we move forward, this actually serves the purpose that we intend it to.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more.
And Sam, I understand the goal, Sam, but I just want to go over something that I missed. In targeted areas, what's the income guidelines?
Can you go back a couple of slides there?
One more slide. Yes, right there. So this is, you know, as high as it can go, but to Sam's point, we could set them lower than this, but these are what the federal government says. So for a targeted area, a 3-person household or more could make up to 118,000. For a non-targeted area, so the parts that are not yellow on the map, they can make up to 95,000.
and I know we can't answer, but just hypothetically, with the program guidelines that we're talking about setting, what would that look like in terms of helping people really be able to get into affordable units, affordable homeownership, particularly in areas that's been impacted by the income gap between wealth between Black and whites?
Yeah, I mean, I think the URA and, with public feedback will figure out what those income levels should be, lower than this. And then really, what will happen is this gets partnered with our down payment closing cost assistance, which for households underneath 80% AMI, they can get $7,500 to help them close. They can borrow up to 97% of value. So what it means is they're really coming to the table without any cash at all for a down payment. And then they get the funding from us, the second mortgage, to do the repairs. So if somebody, at 80% AMI purchases a $150,000 house and, they need $25,000 of repairs, they can go to the bank and get a mortgage for, about $145, get the down payment money from us that will cover that additional $5,000 plus some of their closing costs, and then get a deferred mortgage from us to do the repair.
Is there a requirement? Is there a requirement of how long someone has to stay in that unit, in that house?
Yeah, so we're also, this is the other thing that we're figuring out as it relates to our program guidelines, is what the repayment is going to be for our second mortgage. So this is what we know right now. Our second mortgage is going to be 0% interest, fully deferred until sale. But we are working through the rules. We think that it can be, I was just emailing back and forth on this too, it can be reduced over time, but I will have to give you a more complete answer, the next time, and we'll put it in the program guidelines.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just know that at the beginning we talked that we really wanted to uplift certain communities, and I just wanted to make sure that this was going with the things that we stated earlier. And I understand the program guidelines have not been completed yet, but I can definitely understand why some people have reason to worry about some of the gentrification that's already exists in some of these neighborhoods. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a better understanding of who qualified, how they qualified, and what the program guidelines, I know they're not together, but somewhat look like.
What is the timeline on that, though?
On the program guidelines?
Yeah.
So our goal is to do the issuance in June. So we will be in front of you with final program guidelines in May or June. So we can do draft program guidelines as early as next month.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Not only is it understandable why people would be skeptical, people have good reason to be skeptical of
Yes.
the federal government rules around mortgaging. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why we have a Black-white homeownership divide in the first place is the redlining policies driven by the federal government and unfairness written into the GI Bill and racism in the way that the programs during the New Deal were unfurled and so on and so forth. And still today, Black applicants are 2.5 times more likely to be denied for a mortgage than white applicants. It puts a greater burden on us to make sure that we are being thoughtful in writing the program guidelines and setting this program up in such a way so that it can have the intended effect and help to erase some of those historic wrongs, or not erase them, but to combat some of the impact, lingering impact of some of those historical wrongs, rather than perpetuate them. It's gonna be on us to really dig into the details over the next month or two and review those guidelines and make sure that within, again, the outside limits that the federal government is giving us here, based on the fact that these are tax-free bonds, how do we really target that money to the right neighborhoods, to the right people?
And Sam, I agree. I told you before, I think we've done some great work. This right there is just a program that, this could say, hey, whether we're going forward or backwards.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity to be able to change that. So I just wanted to get a better understanding of exactly how the program guidelines will work in accordance with what we already know for the non-target and targeted areas.
Yep.
So like everyone on the panel and public commentary, I have a lot of concerns about this program. Obviously, the program guidelines being, where we can build in security for those who are maybe LMI families that may have a harder time going through some of the processes that we would set up that would be more beneficial to someone with means, access, what have you. Some of the questions that I have, and I've tried to write them all down to be concise, but we've talked about making sure that these houses are owner occupied. But the other kind of question that I have is really within the rehab realm. So considering, from my vantage point, the city's inventory is, and we've talked about this a little bit, but our city's inventory it needs a lot of repair and a lot of love. Like, we're not talking about the houses that we have when we talk about, say, the land bank, and making sure that, these properties that are tax delinquent, that are in neighborhoods that are blighted, how do we bring them back to, usefulness and restore them? But I don't think that the properties that we have would fit into this program. We're talking about, houses that have been abandoned or vacant, or, what have you, for 15 plus years, that don't just need a new kitchen, don't just need a new bathroom. They're going to need a lot more love and a lot more money. Are we able to layer this program with others, knowing that rehab dollars are some of the most restrictive that are out there? I mean, restrictive in that, like, it's the hardest to get, as Jessica, you said, rehab money, right? You can get down payment costs, you can get closing costs, you can get everything else, but rehab money is so hard to come by, especially if you have some of the barriers that we've laid out. And knowing that our inventory is, again, from my vantage point, what the city owns, what the land bank is looking at, knowing that our inventory is more of that, how are we going to use this program to combat those obstacles?
So I think you asked a great question, Lindsay.
That's a lot of questions.
No, I know. I'm happy to hear this dialogue. I think we need this robust dialogue around this, and this is why it's so important to to bring these things for public discourse. So a couple of things. I think that one of the things that we want to do, that we see, there are a lot of Black residents in particular that want to remain in their neighborhoods. And there are homes in their neighborhoods that could be purchased, and maybe they're not in as bad a condition of what you're looking at when you look at a home that's been abandoned for 10 or 15 years, but they are competing with the speculative market that's essentially buying up properties, putting in low-cost rehab, and then, turning them into student housing perhaps. We want to create a tool that will position folks that are in these neighborhoods to be in position to buy homes. A lot of, when we look at the higher income levels, one of the things that, we don't really talk about, a lot of, young Black families, single moms may have some student loan debt. Maybe they're making okay money, but they can't get a traditional loan because of the student loan debt. And so this provides an opportunity and a vehicle to make that accessible. And I think that's important. I don't think that this is a panacea. I don't think it's a silver bullet for all of our blight issues. I think we need to be very thoughtful about what do we do about properties that have been abandoned for a long period of time. But while we're doing that, we also need to think about, what about that house that in 10 or 15 years, if not purchased now, will be lost and could have been a home for somebody if a tool like this existed? So I think we need to continue to probe this. The program guidelines need to be inclusive of public discourse, of some of the thoughts that we've seen in the chat and that have come forward in public comment. I think that, this is a remedial step to get us in position to be able to have the public provide a resource that the private market right now doesn't have an appetite for. And if we don't move, what we do is we continue to exacerbate that wealth divide, and we allow communities to continue to deteriorate when homeowners and Pittsburgh residents could be put in an ownership position and actually be part of the, bringing back these communities and properties.
Yeah, I mean, closing the Black-white homeownership divide is going to take a lot more than just this one program, and it's going to take a lot more than $22 million. And getting, the thousands of, publicly owned blighted properties back into livable conditions and back on the tax rolls and into the hands of people who want to love them as homes is also going to take more than one program and $22 million. But this feels like this addresses those needs, as Diamante said, and is a critical part of that whole ecosystem that we actually really need.
Yeah, Sam, I agree with that. But the only thing I would say is that, in these communities, a lot of people feel like they've been left behind anyway.
Yeah.
For decades, in terms of home ownership and everything, and programs that they say was going to be beneficial to the community never materialized.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when anybody that's looking at this right now, looking at it without the program guidelines, and seeing the targeted and non-targeted areas and the income guidelines that you have to make. You know, a lot of them don't see themselves involved or invested in this program at this moment in time, just because of the targeted and non-targeted areas in terms of the guidelines. And I know that the program guidelines could be beneficial. My only question is, can we wait to see the program guidelines just so we're a little bit more clear and concise on where we're going, so that it's a better selling point at that moment? Like right now, it's hard to sell the program guidelines if can't nobody see them, and everybody's looking at the tradition of what's happened in the city. It's not gonna take nobody's negative view away of what's happened historically. They're gonna go on that, and we know that. We've seen that in many areas in the city. So is there a way to wait till we see the program guidelines so that way it becomes more of a selling tool?
Can you go,
Robert? Oh,
go ahead.
Actually, Representative, I would say let's not wait, because the reality is it's going to take us at least 4 to 5 months before we actually have a dollar to begin spending. And every month we wait is another month where a home is deteriorating or someone's not able to move into a home. What I would say is the reality is what we're doing today is approving going to market to go get the money, right? What we have to spend time doing over the next month or two is having very serious, candid conversations, because I also share many of your concerns that we're not going to be able to reach those at lower levels of AMI to get them into the homes. But we also have to recognize that there's probably no other avenue for many African Americans other than going this route to actually get into home ownership. And so I don't think we can afford to wait on that. But I don't believe we take final action, which is not what we're doing today. This is just the initial action, but we don't take final action until we do have guidelines that we can all comfortably stand up and support. My other recommendation would be, I think it would be helpful to, especially Chief Powell's concern, if we ask Mr. Richard Snipe to come before the URA board maybe next month to talk about what he is doing at PHDC, because what he is doing at PHDC is exactly what all of us are working or hoping to get done with PGH. And he's doing it with a little bit of money, not $22 million. And so I think if we have a better understanding of what he's doing and how this will assist those sort of efforts, then Chief Powell will better understand how we're targeting those sort of properties that she's concerned about. So I just think it'd be helpful if he maybe were able to come on and provide some examples of what we're currently doing, rehabbing and fixing up properties throughout the entire city. But I just think that would be helpful for us to give us full context. And then lastly, I just want to take a moment to really thank Jessica. As you all are aware, and as she knows, there are many of us who've been talking for over a year now, some closer to 2 years, about how to go to market, about how to go get additional bonding to support additional affordable housing initiatives. And she has really spent time and tried to come up with a very unique and innovative way to try to make that happen. So I did it yesterday, but I just also wanted to just publicly thank her. And then obviously all the staff she has supporting her, but I just wanted to publicly thank her for being able to put this together. But I would suggest we approve this now so we can start working to get the actual money. But then maybe we even want to have an executive session where we discuss the actual guidelines themselves and really spend an hour or two going into detail about how to make this the most beneficial that it can possibly be.
I think those are all
suggestions. I agree. I just wanted to make sure, because we've been down this road before many a time, and we know how that looks at the end of the day. And this is a big decision we're going to make without all details being revealed. And a lot of times when details are not revealed, everybody on here knows that, everybody looks to the historical context of what happened in the past. And so as much as I agree with that, I also think that somehow, some way, we have to be able to uplift that bottom half if we're really talking about closing the wealth gap. And we can't do that unless the program guidelines is in line to help them uplift each other.
Yeah, no question.
We have to build institutional trust. I think Representative Gainey makes a great point. There have been historical harms that have happened with well-meaning programs and initiatives, and we have a new opportunity here to incorporate, public voice, and to also think about the very vulnerable in our city and how we get them on a path to wealth building while addressing some of those concerns at the middle. So it's a great point.
I just have a quick question. Well, a couple actually. the 4 million that would be for the second deferred mortgage, was that an amount of money that was being considered for anything else? Like, how did this sort of arrive? How did we arrive at this amount of money as part of this program?
That money's been here at the URA for such a time when a bond issuance became necessary. And so it is, I believe that they are proceeds from a previous bond issuance that did a program very similar to this, helping Black residents get into home ownership. And so we've preserved that money over the last 15 years or so, waiting for the right moment that it could be redeployed to allow for something like this to take place. But Jessica may have more context, as she's certainly been with the URA longer than I've been here.
Yes, Diamante's exactly right. I mean, that money came from bond program we did in the early 2000s. That really was instrumental in developing a lot of neighborhoods, single family neighborhoods in the city. And we had it sitting there. It's proceeds that's not tied to anything. As part of this, we're also refinancing a 2006 series of bonds as well, which will help get the interest rate down a little bit for folks. But also the deferred mortgages of 40,000, that's determined in part because of the funding we have available. We can also take the next month, and relook at that as well to see if it can be structured at all to do some, houses with more extensive rehab. We're up against some caps there that I need to research as well, but we can also look at that.
Yeah, I don't know, Jody, if this is where you were going with your question, but if we had more than $4 million to devote to the second deferred mortgage program, could we start, investing, allowing people to invest in houses that need more rehab and more work?
Yeah, I mean, right. That's just my larger concern with all of this is, obviously I want to, I get the home ownership gap, I get the racial gap, and I think it's important to address it. I also think we're in the middle of a, public health and economic crisis. And last I checked, there were still 20,000 units, we're still 20,000 units short of people who are unhoused. And so I just, it's hard for me not to feel uncomfortable without some assurance that, either the revenue generated from the debt or there's, there's going to be some clear, specific way that we are putting cash, if we have 4 million for this, that we're finding some cash and putting it back into, communities who have the highest need and don't have any homes, let alone home ownership.
So the other question that I had, and completely agree with you, Jody, on how we can be, if we have more flexible dollars around, are we thinking about, plugging the holes we have? And we know that we'll see once, the pandemic ends. So a question I had was about the 20% purchase, the down payment and the second deferred mortgage. Could you go back to that slide, Jody? Sorry, Jessica. So the question that I had was, is that, and you have to remind me, for the deferred mortgages, there's a sliding scale for AMI. Am I correct? That if you are making, if you're at 100%, 80%, what have you, that there are different amounts that you would cover. So if you have a higher income, there's a lower subsidy for you. Is that correct? I'm not explaining this well, but could someone jump in for me?
So sure. So Lindsay, you're talking about our existing deferred mortgage program, which partners with some of the houses the PHDC does and the CDCs do across the city, where people get a second mortgage from us to make the house more affordable. And yes, you are correct. We often tier that based on income level. So an 80% AMI household would get a little bit more in a second mortgage than a 100% AMI household to be able to help them afford it. This particular program, though, the second mortgage is tied to the rehab. So it's not the second mortgage portion won't be tiered based on income. So it's basically the income thresholds you see in front of you are as high as we can go. But if, we collectively all decide to set lower income thresholds for the program, it's anybody that, let's say hypothetically, we set the income threshold at 60,000. So anybody under that would then qualify for the deferred mortgage in the amount of their repairs.
Helpful, thank you.
Swain has a good question, I think, in the Q&A about credit scores that I would like to have answered.
Can somebody read it?
Credit scores will still be a barrier. Is there a way this program can circumvent that very serious hang up to make sure that those most in need aren't screened out by the banks?
Yes, we were concerned about that too. The credit score requirement is 660. I have already asked. That's a federal requirement that comes with the tax exempt bonds. We've been told there's nothing we can really do about that.
Jessica, I'm Evan Miller with the URA. I'm working with Jessica on this, that we did look into.
A lot of static.
Sorry?
I'm a little bit like a robot.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Try again, Evan.
All right. Am I coming through a little more clear now?
No.
No? All right.
If you want to email me your comment, I'll read it.
Put it in the chat.
Sure.
Hey, Jessica, I've got a quick question. Since we control the second mortgage money, and it's not tied to the bond issue, I know it originates from a previous bond issue. But if we so chose, not to say we would, but could we go deeper on the second deferred and do a deeper renovation and do fewer houses to get to Lindsay's earlier point about this is really for not, I won't call it cosmetic repairs, but this is not to deal with a house that's been boarded up for a decade with a sagging roof kind of a situation. If we wanted to exercise that option, could we do it?
I think the answer to that is yes. I know Andrew Marr, our bond counsel, is on the call. I don't know if he knows the answer, but this is my memory is when we started talking with our financial advisor, the 20% was always sort of what was discussed, that could be 50,000 or 60,000, depending on how high the sales price. And the math we backed into was, well, let's say the average house is 200,000 and everybody gets 20%, that's 40,000 worth of repairs. And if we set aside 4 million, we can do 100 homes. But Greg, to your point, that could be changed if we agree to put more money in. I think we can go higher. I just don't know how high. I'm not sure what those caps are.
Is there a way that we could, and this is, just thinking out loud here, but the way that we were able to layer like some of the new markets tax credits with ELDI's scattered site project, it was also, so it was new markets, I think upfront costs from them as well as housing authority, money to move people to home ownership. Would we be able to layer additional tools for deeper affordability?
Yes,
like, are we not
on the
restricted by
surface, I don't see why the housing authority, mortgage, and third mortgage position would not work here. I assume that it would. That's something I guess I need to double check if there's, some role for volume cap that would keep that from happening. But on the surface, I would think, yes, that is definitely a very good option.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, again, not, because this is federal, we're federally mandated to do certain things and not do others. I wasn't sure if we were able to layer the existing tools that we have to make it more deeply affordable, but that's something I guess that we'd have to do some more research on.
Yeah.
Not sure about the new markets credit. Yeah, I'm not sure about the new markets credits on this. I think, new markets is primarily for commercial. I know we have done it creatively in the past where I believe we invested in the company, the developer himself, as opposed to the project. And it was kind of a workaround to get new markets into a single family developer. But I think the investment, the new markets investment actually went to the developer, not to the project. So it was a little bit of a different scenario. But I think we have to be creative and layering other tools into this, definitely. I think part of the issue, I think we realized, and maybe we didn't describe this earlier enough, that I think we all recognize that this is a single, this is not a home run. I mean, we realize that, we have a lot of other programs and efforts we have to do to really overcome the need out there and to really make equity investments and scale this up to a point where we could actually make a more than just a dent in the problem. But I think we're committed to continue to look at that. I don't know if this program is going to get us all the way there, but on the margin, I think it's a great, at least a great starting point to build vehicles for wealth building in the community. And so I think this is just the first step in what will be hopefully several steps.
So regarding the credit score question, looks like Evan put what he was trying to say through his robot voice into the chat, which says 73% of DPC CAP, I don't know what that is.
That's our down payment program for HOF.
Oh, down payment and closing cost assistance program. Okay, 73% of those borrowers use a conventional loan, which requires a minimum credit score of 660, and a majority of the down payment and closing cost assistance program clients are below 80% AMI.
Yeah, so I think what Evan's trying to say is most of our clients are at that 660 level.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions or comments or discussions or concerns?
The only thing that I would note is that for credit repair, we do intend to pipeline those that are interested in the program to the financial opportunity centers in partnership with the city. So we will be offering credit repair assistance to ensure that nobody is sort of eliminated from the program based on credit score. We believe we can help there as well.
So I had a timeline question. Obviously, a lot of our hangups are the program guidelines. What would be the process of adopting those formally? What's the timeline there?
Sure. So real quick before I answer that, I mean, the next step in this entire process, the reason we're in front of you today is once we get this inducement, we will be applying to Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency for what's called an allocation of volume cap. And that's that thing that gives us the ability to issue bonds. And we want to hit the April PHFA board meeting, and their board meeting is always the same day each month as ours. So what will happen in April is they will be going to their board to give us volume cap. And then Lindsay, to answer your question, the next step in program guidelines is if this is what the board desires, sometimes when we do program guidelines, we come to the board with just a final set of program guidelines, or sometimes we come with a draft set and then the following month a final set. And given the interest, I would assume that would be the best route here. So we would try to get a set of guidelines to you in April, and then for you to review publicly, and then final guidelines in May. Or if more discussion is needed, or we need final say from our financial advisors, it would get pushed back to May and June. We will probably be back with final bond action in June anyhow, to be able to actually issue the bonds.
Thanks for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there a second? There's a motion. Is there a second?
So, question, my apologies, I know this isn't procedural, but can we make this vote?
Your question needs to come after a second procedurally. Okay. Sorry, we can have further discussion after it's been motioned and seconded, but there needs to be a second to the motion. You want to second it, then we can entertain additional discussion.
So I have to second it to make my question. Okay, second.
Okay, thank you. The motion has been motioned and seconded. Now we can have any further discussion. So entertain additional discussion or another question.
Yeah, so can we, again, I think my hang up again are the program guidelines, and I completely agree and understand with the councilman on wanting to move this sooner rather than later so that we're not missing out on dollars. I completely agree right there. I think my concern still lies with these program guidelines, and I don't know if there is a way for some of these points to be contingent on a
Well,
is there some way for this vote to be conditioned on the guidelines somehow?
Yeah,
I don't know what that
I think
procedure is.
the procedure would be that the final bond issuance that comes back to us, it would be in like at least 3 board meetings from now, would be subject to our having resolved the program guidelines questions by then, right? Not this vote, but the final vote.
Right.
This is the initial vote to start the process. Then we've got 3-4 months during which the bond process is going to unfold, and staff will continue to be diligently working on all of the goals that we've I think all agree on here. And then presumably those guidelines will come to us multiple times, and the final bond issuance will come to us. I don't see any need to make this particular vote contingent upon that, because the entire thing this is not a final action. The entire thing is contingent upon further board approval.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without program guidelines, then nothing would happen with this inducement. We just, went and issued a bond.
Right.
So again, my apologies, this one I want to clarify. So if we get to a point where we can't come to an agreement as a board on what the best program guidelines are, then what happens to the program?
It dies. Well, it doesn't really die. It just never is birthed.
Okay.
So we're not on the hook for 22 million at that point.
There you go. That's my question. Cool.
We don't want to spend the staff time and the due diligence necessary to even get to the next step if the board is not comfortable with even contemplating this concept of increasing home ownership, affordable home ownership. If that is a non-starter, then today you don't vote, and we don't take next steps to borrow. But if we're going to dedicate staff time, we want to make sure that that's an effort that will yield a result, and then we can get to the next step. And what I'm going to do, if the board decides to move forward today, we're going to form an internal committee that will dedicate time to developing program guidelines based on the public comment that's come in, based on the board's comments. And I think that we revisit this with the board and just so that you're up to date and that you're being briefed on how this is developing. And once we get to the point where you are being presented with program guidelines, if you are not satisfied, then you do not motion for us to bring you final guidelines.
Is there any way to insert some community input into that committee or group of folks, particularly
I think
those who have been,
critical.
Frankly screwed over by things like this in the past?
I think that's going to be critical. I don't know how we do this and do it effectively without some level of community input. So that would be one of the things that I would want to do as a part of this internal committee that I'm proposing to form.
Okay.
So thank you. So there's a motion and second. We're entertaining further discussion. I think technically if there's no further discussion, we need a motion to vote to close the discussion procedurally, if I'm remembering the rules correctly.
So moved.
So second motion, all those in favor of closing the discussion and moving to vote? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, so discussion is closed. There was a previously, I think Councilman Lavelle motioned approval on this agenda item. It was seconded. All those in favor of approving the agenda item before us? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries.
If I may, I would actually recommend that we use the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board. This may be something that they can help us with. We have a new chair in Kelly Sebron, where it may be helpful to bring that, those folks to the table. They do a lot of home ownership work. So that would be, really the recommendation is to probably start with the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board and ask for their counsel and insight as we develop the guidelines.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a lot. Hopefully, I remembered my Robert's rules correctly in that we got through it. That was a really fantastic, robust discussion. I think this is a big issue. We got to have a lot more discussion on in the coming months. So we got a lot of work to do to get this right. But if we get it right, you know, it's going to have a really positive impact on our city and on a lot of people in the city. Thank you. All right, next agenda item is rental gap loan for Garfield Highlands.
Yeah, hi everybody. I rejoined on a phone. Do I sound better now?
Yeah.
Sound great, Evan.
All right, beautiful. I don't know what happened. I made it to the 1:30 sound check. It didn't work out for me. All right, well, good afternoon. I'm here to talk about Garfield Highlands, which is a 2020 low-income housing tax credit project on Aiken, Rosetta, and Kincaid Streets in Garfield. And specifically before us today is a $1.25 million loan with Garfield Highlands LP, who is basically a single purpose entity that was created by Gatesburg Road Development and Bloomfield Garfield Corporation, who formed the partnership for this project. What they'll be doing is acquiring 30 vacant lots or abandoned homes in the Garfield neighborhood. And they're going to develop 25 lease purchase units, so new construction, single family, affordable rental housing scattered throughout those streets that I mentioned previously. It's all part of a larger community strategy of BGCs to eliminate blight and stabilize property values and provide affordable housing for an ever-changing neighborhood. So this is actually the third phase or iteration of a very similar project that Gatesburg Road and BGC have undertaken together. And I believe the wait list for those first two phases is well over 500 people. So these are very badly needed units in the neighborhood. The project itself is going to be a mix of 14 3-bedroom units and 11 2-bedroom units. And 50% of the units in the project are being reserved for households that are either homeless or have a member that has special needs. An interesting facet of this project is also that at year 15, going into year 16, all of the tenants who are currently living in the units will have the opportunity to purchase their unit at an affordable sales price. So they will all have that opportunity. They do not all have to do that if they don't want to or are not able to at that time. It will continue operating whatever units are not sold as rental units during that time. So closing's expected in July of 2021, and it's expected to be completed by December 31st, 2022. So again, before us today is a $1.25 million rental gap program loan. The term of the loan would be 40 years, and it would be a cash flow repayment back to the URA, 50% of the project's net cash flow. HOF funding makes up $540,000 of this loan here today, and then home funding makes up the rest. And there would be an affordability deed restriction that is recorded for 3 units at or below 30% AMI, 13 units at or below 50% AMI, and then 8 units at or below 60% AMI. And again, all a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Rick Swartz and Andrew Haynes from Gatesburg Road Development are here. Rick Swartz from BGC. I'm going to turn it over to them for any comments or to the board for any questions. But again, $1.25 million loan for Garfield Highlands.
Rick, you there? I see him on the list. Maybe he needs to be given permission to unmute. I don't know.
We're asking him to unmute now. We're going to give him a second here to see if he's able to do that. All right, it looks like he got it.
Hey, I was listening in on the own PGH discussion, and I think there could be community input that would be helpful in refining the program objectives. So by all means, feel free to call upon those of us who might be able to help fine tune the program, if you will.
Yes, please. And thank you.
Yeah. So anyways, you can see the project before you. Garfield, like a number of East End neighborhoods now, is being buffeted by market rate activity. that obviously we cannot control. So the community is pushing forward with more affordable housing initiatives so that we can retain a balance of incomes and a balance of home ownership versus rental in our community. The project has been about 4.5 years in the making. It took us 3 cracks at the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency before we finally got a commitment of the low income tax credits for the project, thanks to Ed Gainey and to our other elected officials like Jay Costa for helping us with that. So we're basically recycling a lot of city-owned property. Most of it is owned by the city. We're gradually acquiring those lots now as we speak, and we probably will have about another 6 lots to acquire before we've finished the whole site control process. So I'm happy to take any questions people have about the project. I don't want to just go on and on endlessly with this.
Anybody have any questions?
I was
Questions or comments? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, since we were talking about it last week, we love to see that there are 2 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units. I think it's wonderful that more folks are developing, thinking about affordable units for families. So appreciate you considering that, and love to see it.
Thank you. And just so you know, on this lease to purchase concept, we are going to work with a group out of Cleveland, the Cleveland Housing Network, which each year helps several hundred families make the transition from being tenants in developments like these to becoming homeowners. So the first project we did with S&A Homes, of which Gatesburg Road Development is a subsidiary, those tenants now are about halfway through the rental period, and we're going to start working with them within the next year now to get them prepared for home ownership, if that's the route that they want to go.
Great. Any other questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. This is the, and we're going to move from housing into development services, I think, right? Yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm Senior Project Engineer McGarry Luginski. We request authorization to enter into an agreement for construction management and construction inspection services with PJ Dick Incorporated for a contract not to exceed of $600,000. The RFPs were received on January 8th of this year. The funding source for this agreement is PTC sale proceeds 800-00. 10 proposals were received. 4 of these consultants were shortlisted and interviewed. PJ Dick was determined to have the best team based upon the criteria listed in the RFP and their interview with the selection committee. They are also MWBE compliant with 21% MBE and 7% WBE. Are there any questions?
This is, remind me, this is the parking garage we have to build down on Technology Drive pursuant to like commitments we have with other entities down there, or what's the background on this one?
That's the one.
Yeah.
We're obligated to deliver this to help fulfill obligations in the technology center.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? If there are no questions or comments, then a motion will be in order.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. Crawford Square exclusive negotiations.
Hi, I'm Chuck Elkhorn presenting the Crawford Square for sale Phase 3 development. So in the 1990s, Crawford Square was developed over several phases covering rental and for sale housing. The for sale portion was done over 2 phases. There are, however, 12 remaining vacant URA-owned parcels in this area. And the Crawford Square Homeowners Association has requested that the last remaining lots be developed. The Crawford Square HOA has a set of construction standards established in the 1990s to keep any new development consistent with the contextual design of existing houses. So in early 2020, Bridging the Gap Development came forward with interest in developing the remaining URA-owned property. And Bridging the Gap is proposing up to 6 for sale townhouses, with the possibility of 2 of those being affordable for households with incomes up to 80% area median income. The developer has met with the Crawford Square HOA several times over the past year, and we are requesting authorization to enter exclusive negotiations with Bridging the Gap Development LLC for a period of 6 months. This time will be spent working on development plan and for the developer to submit a proposal package. In addition to working with a URA housing lending team on possible financial support for affordable units. Derek Tillman from Bridging the Gap Development is in attendance if there are any questions for him. Rosalind Guy McCorkle from the Homeowners Association also is in attendance.
Thank you. So this would come back after this the period of exclusive negotiations for final action?
Yes, it would come for acceptance of a proposal package, and then there would actually be another approval needed for acceptance of the construction drawings and evidence and financing.
Okay. Derek, you have anything to add?
I don't have much to add, just that we're excited to complete this phase of, this amazing project that has produced home ownership for a lot of folks in our community. So excited to build upon the legacy that's already been created.
Any questions, comments, issues to flag?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
This is Leah Matthews.
Go ahead.
Sorry. This is Leah Matthews, the Community Development Manager. I'll be presenting the 4800 block. Today, we are requesting authorization to enter into exclusive negotiations with the City of Bridges Community Land Trust for a period of 6 months for the sale of 8 publicly owned parcels along Chatsworth and Hazelwood Avenue in the Hazelwood neighborhood. The City of Bridges Community Land Trust project will build 12 permanently affordable for sale units in Hazelwood to be sold to households between 50 and 80% AMI. We have Ed Nusser here from the City of Bridges. He's available if there are any questions or comments.
I don't. Ed, you're welcome to add anything you want to add. Anybody else having any questions or comments?
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say a quick thank you. Really appreciate the continued partnership with the URA and the neighborhood of Hazelwood on this project. A couple of really exciting things I just wanted to make everybody aware of as we enter exclusive negotiations. This project is one of 15 from across the country that was accepted into the International Living Future Institute's Living Building Challenge. So if we're successful in the work with our partners at ILFI, these will be the first living building certified affordable homes anywhere in Pennsylvania. And what that means in reality, in practice, is that these homes would achieve a 50% reduction in water usage from the regional baseline, a 70% reduction in energy use from the regional baseline, from energy use being drawn from the grid, I should say. And also excitingly requires a 20% of our materials budget is coming from the local and regional economy. So we are really excited about beginning this work to create these homes. Right now, our projected purchase prices have us in the 60 to 65% of AMI for eligible buyers. Obviously, that increases the gap because we're hitting the lower side of the 50 to 80% income targeting, but that's what we feel like is appropriate. And we're also really excited to be doing this work with the lens of living, building homes in a neighborhood like Hazelwood that has been the home of industry and pollution and the sort of overlapping and compounding effects of environmental and racial and economic injustice. To sort of flip the script on that is really exciting for us. And so I just wanted to continue to thank the URA staff and board for the partnership on this project.
Yeah, thanks for all you're doing. I mean, I think it's really exciting to be putting land into the hands of a community land trust to safeguard against speculation and gentrification. So thanks for what you're doing. And again, it's sort of a theme in this board meeting, but more investments here in affordable home ownership in neighborhoods that desperately need it.
I was going to say again, more multi-unit bedrooms. So this is great to see so many projects today that are again geared towards more affordable units for families and green and sustainable. So.
Any other questions or comments? And if not, a motion would be in order.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Web mapping and data.
Hey everyone, I'm Tim Dolan, Data and GIS Specialist in our Development Services Unit. I come to you seeking authorization to enter into a 12-month agreement with Opportunity Space Inc. for continued access to their Building Blocks cloud-based web application for an amount not to exceed $25,000. The URA implemented Building Blocks in 2017 to equip staff with analytical tools to guide decision-making and inform policy decisions at the authority. Since then, the URA has been using Building Blocks to guide strategic planning around property acquisition, identifying nuisance properties, and performing market-level real estate analysis. With this tool, URA can combine its own internal data departments and open data portal into a platform that gives an unlimited number of staff across all units the flexibility to investigate areas of interest, all instantly and in one place. This year, the URA will continue to use Building Blocks for such purposes, as well as further develop and host a land pricing model used by the transactions team. Thanks for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Okay, definitely changing up the nature of the discussion here. Any, so no discussions, then a motion would be in order.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And Tom 24.
This is Leah Matthews again. Today we are requesting authorization to accept the redevelopment proposal and enter into a disposition contract for the sale of Block 10P lots 113, 113A, 113B, and 133C in the 5th Ward to Tom Development LLC, also known as Big Tom's Barbershop, or a related entity for $21,000 plus cost. Mr. Boyd's project will take the iconic Ham's Barbershop and the adjacent lots and redevelop them into a mixed-use structure that will house Mr. Boyd's business, Big Tom's Barbershop, on the 1st floor, and will have 2 affordable rental units on floor 2 and 3, and those would be available to households between 50 and 80% AMI. The adjacent lots would be used for neighborhood-based businesses, and it can also be used by the community. Mr. Boyd presented his proposal to the Hill District neighborhood at a District 6 held community meeting back in September, and his proposal received an average community feedback score of 97%. We have Mr. Boyd here along with our partner, Neighborhood Allies, and we would just like to them to say a few words.
Great.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me and letting me speak. I'll just humbly say that my name is Thomas Boyd Sr. I'm the owner of Big Tom's Barbershop and just newly Tom 24 Development LLC, and we're just happy with all the efforts, and we appreciate all the support that we've been getting, especially Chantalea at the URA, Diamante, Daniel Lavelle, all the people at Neighborhood Allies. And we just feel like I want to push forward to get this development project going. And I know that it will do a lot to uplift the Hill District, the community. And I'm in a lease situation now. It'll be my first time owning property, as you know, and I just feel like it would be good. It would be very uplifting for the community. And we want to just keep pushing forward, doing our due diligence, and we're thankful for all of the help and support that we've received. And if Zach and Glenn, if you guys want to say anything from Neighborhood Allies, they've been helping me. They've been giving me great advice, and many other people and organizations. And once again, I say thank you for the opportunity. Either Zach or Glenn, could you help me come out?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if there's any questions, happy to answer them. But it's truly been a pleasure to work with the URA team, and Mr. Boyd in helping push this project forward.
And from Neighborhood Allies, we're just thankful for the opportunity to work with the URA to provide technical assistance. This has been a true pleasure working with Tom and really seeing his development, not only as a developer, but really from the first meeting that we had, and how he explained this project to now, just the growth and the team that we have established. So thank you all. We look forward to this project and going forward.
Thank you to all of you. Are there any questions or comments?
Super excited. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
On to agenda B.
Motion to approve agenda B in its entirety.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And I think that concludes our meeting. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So we need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. This concludes the March 11th, 2021 board meeting of the Urban Redevelopment Authority. It's been a good one with a lot of phenomenal discussion and a lot more to come, especially on the affordable home ownership bond issue.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Thank you, staff, for your leadership. We'll talk to you all next month.
Bye.
Have a good one.